Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, Founder Stories, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation of history's most visionary founders. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these trailblazers. Now, let's meet our guest. Today, we are sitting down with the legendary retail pioneer who built a kingdom of childhood wonder, the founder of Toys R Us, Charles Philip Lazarus. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Calvin.
We are thrilled to have you. Let's dive right in. When you first conceived of your business, the world was a very different place. What was the exact moment you realized society was moving in a direction only you could see? And how did you convince the early skeptics?
It goes back to when I just returned home from World War II. I served as a cryptographer, and when I got back to Washington, D.C., every single fellow serviceman I talked to had the exact same plan. They said they were going to go home, get married, have children, and live the American dream. I realized right then that a massive wave of families was coming. I didn't even have a name for it yet. The world hadn't quite coined the term baby boom, but I knew the timing was perfect to sell baby furniture. The skeptics thought it was just a regular post-war transition, but I saw a fundamental shift in our society's demographics, and I set up shop right in my father's bicycle repair storefront to capture it.
That is incredible foresight. Leaving behind safety to build something entirely unproven is a massive gamble, though. What did your life look like the day you decided to go all in? And what was the core belief that gave you the courage to take that first step?
I was 25 years old, and I had saved a few dollars while in the service. I actually considered going to college on the GI Bill, but honestly, I felt a bit too old to start sitting in a classroom. I wanted to build something. My life was very simple, living in the same house I was born in, right above my father's shop. My core belief was that parents would always prioritize their children's needs, no matter what. With just $5,000, I took the leap and opened the Children's Supermart in 1948.
In the absolute beginning, when you had no data, no capital, and no blueprint, what was the one truth you held on to that everyone else around you dismissed?
The truth was that toys were a much better business model than furniture, even though traditional retailers dismissed toys as a mere seasonal, Christmas-only item. When I started, I only sold cribs, strollers, and high chairs. But parents started asking for baby toys, so I put a few rattles and stuffed animals on the shelves. Then, the light bulb moment happened. A mother came back because her child had broken a toy, and she wanted a replacement. It hit me like a ton of bricks. A family only buys one crib or one high chair, but they will buy toys over and over again for every single child. I realized toys were a year-round necessity, not a seasonal afterthought, and I completely pivoted the business to reflect that.
That completely changed the game. But long before your company became a household name, you hit a wall where everything nearly collapsed. Take us back to that first major failure. What went wrong, and how did you find the willpower to restart?
To finance our massive expansion, I sold the operation to Interstate Department Stores in 1966 for $7.5 million, though I stayed on to run the toy division. By 1974, Interstate's other retail ventures collapsed, and the parent company was forced into a massive, ruinous bankruptcy. Everything I had built was tied up in that wreckage. Instead of walking away, I went directly to the bankruptcy court. I had the willpower because I knew the toy division itself was incredibly healthy. I convinced the court to let me oversee the restructuring, liquidated the unprofitable non-toy operations, and over 4 intense years, we emerged from bankruptcy stronger than ever, renaming the whole corporation Toys R Us.
Talk about a high-stakes rescue mission. Innovation often looks like madness to contemporaries. Was there a specific product, philosophy, or strategy you were utterly convinced would work, but the public initially rejected or ridiculed? How did you respond?
People thought the sheer size and style of our stores was absolute madness. In 1957, when I opened the first official Toys R Us in Rockville, Maryland, I introduced a giant, supermarket-style warehouse. Up to that point, toy stores were small, neighborhood shops with limited selection. I built long, cavernous aisles and stacked boxes all the way to the rafters with thousands of different items. Critics thought it looked cold and overwhelming, and they thought selling toys at a constant discount year-round would ruin margins. I responded by doubling down on inventory and creating a sense of unimaginable abundance. When kids walked in and saw toys stacked to the ceiling, their eyes lit up, and the parents couldn't resist.
Behind the legendary name was a human being facing immense pressure, whether from financial panics, internal betrayal, or personal doubt. How did you shoulder that burden without letting the vision splinter?
The pressure of managing thousands of employees in a multi-billion-dollar global empire can be incredibly heavy. I always managed it by keeping my focus entirely on the end customer, the child. I used to say that to be a success in this business, you have to possess imagination and you have to think like a child. When numbers got tight or logistics got complicated, I would walk the store floors and watch the children's reactions. Keeping that pure sense of joy and wonder at the center of my focus kept me grounded and prevented the vision from ever splintering.
Speaking of the early days, who were the very first people beyond your immediate family to buy into what you were doing? How did you convince early workers or customers to trust an entirely unproven concept?
The very first people to buy into the concept were the young post-war parents in our Washington, D.C. neighborhood. Our original location had terrible parking, which was a huge hassle for parents carrying heavy baby gear. I convinced them to trust us simply through word-of-mouth value and deep care. I adopted a strict cash-and-carry discount policy, offering lower prices than the big department stores. One parent told another, and soon enough, the neighborhood adopted us as their own.
Can you take us to the exact moment where you felt the momentum shift? What was the specific milestone, contract, or breakthrough where you realized, we aren't just going to survive, we are going to change everything?
The momentum shifted dramatically when we mastered the computerized inventory system in the 1970s and 1980s. In our warehouse format, we carried around 18,000 individual items. Keeping track of what was selling in real time allowed us to spot massive, overnight toy trends before anyone else. When we could immediately restock a hot, sold-out toy across the country while department stores were left with empty shelves, I knew we weren't just surviving. We had become a category killer and completely redefined the retail landscape.
You didn't just build a company, you built a distinct culture and philosophy that outlasted you. In the early days, when it was just a handful of people in a room, how did you instill that standard of excellence or service?
I instilled a culture of customer obsession and joyful branding. From the very beginning, I wanted our image to be synonymous with fun. I personally stylized our logo with the backward R to make it look like a child had written it. When we introduced our mascot, Jeffrey the Giraffe, and our famous television jingle, it wasn't just marketing. It was a promise to our workers and our customers that we were entering a world of childhood magic. I expected every employee to protect that feeling of wonder for the families who walked through our doors.
History books often flatten a person's life into a neat, polished narrative. What is the biggest misconception people have about your journey, your character, or how your company was actually built?
The biggest misconception is that Toys R Us was built on a complex, heavily calculated corporate master plan from day one. People look at the global empire and think it was engineered by a team of high-level analysts. In reality, it was a series of accidental discoveries born out of simply listening to the neighborhood moms and dads. I didn't start out to revolutionize the toy industry. I started out trying to sell cribs, and I just paid attention when a customer told me her child broke a doll. It was a journey of adaptation, not a rigid blueprint.
Building an empire always requires a steep personal cost. Looking back at the entirety of your life, what was the hardest sacrifice you had to make for the sake of your vision? And was it ultimately worth it?
The hardest sacrifice was undoubtedly the sheer amount of time and personal energy consumed by the business. When you are open 7 days a week, year-round, and constantly expanding into new countries, the work never truly stops. It takes a toll on your personal life and demands a level of relentless focus that can distance you from the quiet moments of everyday living. But looking back at the millions of children whose faces lit up when they saw that backward R, and knowing we created a place dedicated entirely to joy, It was worth every single sacrifice.
If you could send a single sentence back through time to yourself on the very first day you started this venture, knowing every trial, triumph, and heartbreak that awaited you, what would you say?
I would tell myself, trust your instincts, listen closely to the parents, and never lose the ability to think like a child.
Charles, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I just want to say how incredibly grateful I am to have had this opportunity to step back into the studio and speak with you, Calvin. Sharing the origin of Toys R Us brings back so many wonderful memories of post-war ambition and childhood laughter. To all the builders and dreamers listening out there, remember to keep a little bit of that childhood imagination alive in whatever you do. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you, Charles. What an unbelievable look into the mind of a retail genius who turned a simple bicycle shop corner into a global empire of joy. From noticing the repetitive nature of toy buying to rescuing the company from a massive corporate bankruptcy, Charles Philip Lazarus showed us what it truly means to be a visionary founder. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast, Founder Stories. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.